Good. Good morning again, everybody on the platform. Honorable members, good morning. Support staff of the committee, members of the media, members of the public. Today we are meeting with SALGA, South African Local Government Association, and the Congress of South African Trade Unions, deliberating on the 2021 Division of Revenue Amendment Bill. You are all welcome. Darren, do we have any apologies?
Yes, Chairperson, we received apologies from Ms. Peters, Ms. Digale, Mr. Kwang, and Mr. Sarupen.
Let's note the apologies. There's also an apology from Honorable Sheikh Imam. He was involved in a car accident, but he says he's recuperating, but it was a bad car accident. But I spoke to him and wish him a speedy recovery. Okay, let's go. Let's go to agenda item number 3.
Sorry, Honorable Chair.
Yes, Honorable Kaisa.
Can the meeting also note the apology of Honorable Dipuo Peters?
Yes, we received the apology, Honorable Kaisa. Thank you. Okay, we then go to agenda item number 3. That is the presentation on the Division of Revenue Amendment Bill 2021 by SALGA, as I said, the South African Local Government Association. I'm told that SALGA is led by Councillor Bongani Baloyi, if I'm not mistaken. I would like to welcome him. And I think we're meeting at an opportune time with SALGA, having come back from local government elections, local government starting a new term. So I think it's the right time to engage. And our engagement is just to ensure that there is service delivered to our people, is to ensure that money that is being appropriated by Parliament is effectively and efficiently used, and that there are no unnecessary leakages, that all the laws that govern us, especially local government, are adhered to. Just to congratulate everybody who was involved with the local government elections and the starting of new local governments, as we know. So I'll request Councillor Bongani and the team that he's leading to start with the presentations. We'll give Councillor Baloyi 30 minutes to go over, maximum to go over their presentation. Then we'll engage with the presentation after that. Councillor Baloyi, you're welcome, sir. I'll only talk to you after 30 minutes once you have finished the presentation.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Good morning to yourself. Good morning to the honorable members and the support staff of this very important committee. Mr. Chairman, I must start from probably a sad note and admit that my status has changed. Before the 1st of November, I was Councillor Bongani Baloyi, but now I'm unemployed. So I'm quite happy to be referred to as Bongani Baloyi, an NEC member of SALGA. We still represent the SALGA because our constitution does not allow for a void in leadership as we are preparing for the incoming NEC and leadership of SALGA after the elections. And we're quite excited that there has been elections and municipalities have managed to reconvene or establish themselves to be able to carry forth the work of serving our people. Chairman, I'm not alone. I'm also with some officials of SALGA, in particular Nceba and Khomotso. Chairperson, if you can indulge me, I'm going to ask Nceba to make the presentation on our behalf. Then we're in your hands and we can take questions thereafter. I think the presentation was circulated to yourselves. So Chairperson, if you'll allow me, I'll hand over to Nceba to deliver the presentation on our behalf. Thank you so much, Chair.
Perfect, Mr. Baloyi.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you to the NEC member. I'm actually sharing my screen. I trust that it is visible.
Yes, it is. It is visible. Thank you. Continue.
No, thank you, Chairperson. The presentation outline is as it is reflected on the slide. I will just go into it. The purpose of this presentation, in line with the invitation we got from the committee, is to provide the committee with SALGA's comments on the 2021 MTPPS, as well as the Division of Revenue Bill. Just as a precursor, we've just made reference through to the Intergovernmental Fiscal Relations Act. Particularly, the significance of this is to indicate to the committee that SALGA forms part of the budget panel that interfaces via the technical budget forum and ultimately the actual budget forum, where all the SALGA political leadership, as well as the relevant ministers, MECs also interface in coming up to what was delivered by the Minister of Finance on the 11th of November. So we've been part of the process. Today, it's in the middle where we're providing our briefing to the committee. In formulating our comments to the Division of Revenue Bill as presented in the MTPPS, we've started by compiling a macroeconomic outlook, of which I will quickly just go through it because it sets the scene as to the SALGA comments, as well as the recommendation of SALGA at the end of the day. From the key points that we picked up from the MTPPS, we noted that for the 2021, the economy is expected to grow by 5.1%, and it will then stabilize to 1.8% in 2022. It is projected to return to pre-pandemic levels in the following year. Due to the global demand and higher commodity prices, those are what have contributed to a higher than expected growth, particularly in the current financial year. And there is a graphic illustration there indicating the projected GDP, as it is indicated there. When one looks at the 2021 budget that was tabled in February, the projection was 3.3, but as indicated in terms of the commodity pricing on the mining side, that has contributed to a significant increase in terms of the GDP rate. This also forms the basis of what is to follow. We also note that the fiscal deficit is expected to narrow to 7.8% of GDP in 2021 to 2022 to 4.9% in the 2024 to 2025 financial year. You'll note that from the original budget it was projected particularly at 14%, and that for the 2021-2022, it has narrowed as reflected by the percentages that are reflected in the blocked status. The gross government debt as a percentage of GDP is increasing from 69% of GDP in 2021 to 2022 to 77.8% of GDP by 2024 to 2025 in the absence of policy adjustment. That is expected to stabilize at 78.1% of GDP by 2025 to 2026. Further, looking at the consolidated government fiscal framework, what we've noted in terms of the gross loan debt is that the almost 4 trillion debt that we now owe is incurring debt service costs that will become the largest portion of spending compared to individual functions from the next year. We also note that revenue for 2021 to 2022 is now estimated to reach 1.5 trillion compared to 1.4 trillion at the time of the 2021 budget in February. This is an upward revision of about 120.3 billion, yet these temporary benefits are projected to fall short of pre-COVID-19 expectations over the medium term and weak growth in all tax categories. Similarly as well, we also reflected that there are 27.8 million social grants recipients, which accounts for plus minus 46% of RSA population, whilst the number of working people has also declined, as I think evidenced with the statistics on the unemployment rate. Over the MTF cycle for 2022, the local government sphere will be allocated more than 450 billion from the nationally raised revenue. The table there essentially reflects the various elements as well as their percentage relative to the GDP, which I'm not going to go into detail, as they are reflected there and self-explanatory. Overall, the basis of our comments, as we, the voice of local government, and we represent their interests, what we have observed is that from the 2021 original budget, in terms of the vertical allocation share, the local sphere of government was allocated 9%, with the national sphere and the provincial sphere allocated 49.5% and 41.5% respectively. The effect now of the division of revenue bill is that the local sphere allocation decreases to 8.5% share, as well as the provincial share sphere share decreases to 40.9%, resulting in the national sphere having a share of 50.6%. Now, coming through to the actual SALGA's comments on the MTPPS and the division of revenue bill. Organized local government welcomes the increase in the allocation to the local sphere of government for the 2022-23 to up to 2024 MTF of about 700 million or 0.7 billion or 2% to 295 billion when comparing the 2021 original budget as well as the MTPPS as well. However, although we also note the small downward adjustment for the 2021 to 2022 financial year allocation by $500 million or 500 million, that translates to 0.4% when compared to the 2021 MTPPS, the allocation is 137.6 billion versus the original budget of 138.1. On the tables on the left-hand side, it's the blocks that are also having a black border that indicates the adjustment of the Division of Revenue bill. Despite these reductions, organized local government acknowledges the need to reduce the deficit and provide additional short-term support for health, social protection, job creation, and peace and security. We note this because the MTPPS as well anticipates a primary budget surplus by 2024 to 25, thereby bringing the fiscal consolidation to an end. There is an overall reduction, as it could be seen, in the local government allocation per the 2021 MTPPS versus the budget for 2021. What is reflected on the graphic illustration, you'll note that in orange, it reflects the current DORB that is under review, as well as the gold bars reflect that. As indicated earlier, there's a 0.5 percentage points decrease, and as well as a 0.3 percentage points decrease in the 2022 to 2023 financial year. Despite these reductions, SALGA acknowledges the tough economic outlook and limited fiscal space that has been exacerbated by the significant negative impact of COVID-19 on the economy. Hence, organized local government supports the reduction of the budget deficit and stabilizing of the GDP ratio. The macroeconomic strategy that includes fiscal consolidation to curb additional spending and maintain expenditure ceiling is supported. The reason for supporting this is because we note that the 2021 MTPPS charts a course over the MTF period to this primary budget surplus by 2024 to 2025, wherein, according to the medium-term budget policy statement as well, on page 46, it indicates that the 2021 MTPPS proposes to allocate 48.4% to national departments and 42% to provinces and 9.6% to local government over the next 3 years. We note that this proposal shall result in resources allocated over the next 3 years to national departments contracting by an annual average of 1.8%, provincial resources increasing by 0.7%, and local government increasing by 4.1%. As the committee members would note, Chair, over the years, SALGA had been raising the inadequacy, particularly of the vertical allocation, but we see this as a move towards the realization of the promise that is contained on the white paper on local government, where it indicates that the local sphere of government is entitled to an equitable share of nationally raised revenue in order that it may provide basic services and perform the functions allocated to it. Hence, then, that the proposed increase in the allocation to local government over the next 3 years will gradually bring to reality the promise contained on the white paper. Hence, the SALGA will support the proposal. So it is the necessary tightening of the belt at the moment so that you can reap the benefits in the future. Further, on changes to the structure of local government allocations, page 48 of the documents that were submitted with the Division of Revenue Bill supporting it, it indicates on page 48 that local government equitable share formula has been updated to account for projected household growth, inflation, and estimated increase in bulk water and electricity costs over the MTF period. Also, we juxtaposed this with the promise that is contained in the white paper, particularly as it relates that the local government cannot be solely responsible for redistribution, and national government has a critical role to play in this regard, particularly with respect to subsidizing the provision of basic services. So we view the update to the LGS formula as brought about by the 2021 Division of Revenue Bill, that it is welcomed in that it indicates a move towards a more cost-reflective allocation to adequately cover the cost of providing basic services to communities. Hence, as SALGA, will support the proposal, and it is part of what we've been raising over the years and in our participation at the Budget Forum and the Budget Forum Lekgotla. In respect to changes to the structure of local government allocations in infrastructure development, the minister's MTPPS speech, as well as the Division of Revenue documentation on page 48, it also indicates that the infrastructure fund is an important intervention towards our strategic goal of ensuring that total investment in public infrastructure is nearly 30% of gross fixed capital formation by 2020, as envisioned in the NTP, and that we will maintain our commitment to the fund, including allocating 100 billion over a decade from 1920 financial year. Again, we've juxtaposed this particularly to the promise contained in the white paper as it relates through to development in investment, as it relates that meeting basic needs in the context of existing service backlogs will require increased investment in municipal infrastructure. As SALGA, we welcome the minister's commitment to the infrastructure fund over the decade ahead, as indicated. Further, SALGA aims to part of a collaborative initiative with the DPSA, the infrastructure fund, and other sector departments. Further, SALGA will work with the infrastructure fund to support municipalities to develop feasible and bankable infrastructure plans to access funding. Project preparation remains a key impeding capability and bottleneck to municipalities, channeling more projects through the funding pipeline. National Treasury Project Preparation Facility, we also espouse that it should ideally be made available to more municipalities. SALGA plans to engage with the DPSA Project Preparation Office to establish ways to support municipalities. Investment in new infrastructure is critical. However, SALGA deems it opportune for the infrastructure fund through its brownfield infrastructure projects to target the financing of refurbishment of existing infrastructure such that it will guarantee sustainable provision of services throughout the infrastructure's life cycle. On reviewing the structure of local government fiscal framework, the DORB bill, as well as the MTPPS statement, indicates that between August 2020 and July 2021, special Lekgotla of the Budget Forum and the intergovernmental structure established to facilitate consultation on local government finances met 3 times to discuss municipal sustainability, local government fiscal and functional framework, and asset management on infrastructure funding. Flowing from these deliberations, there is work that is also still underway between all stakeholders, being Treasury, COGTA, as well as SALGA and the FFC, and provinces implementing and monitoring the joint work plans for a 5-year local government reform journey that we've embarked upon. This is also linked to ensure that the promise as contained in the white paper is ultimately realized. Earlier, I remarked that SALGA participates in the budget forum, and we've developed concept notes for the budget forum, the Lekgotla, with the recent one on asset management, on infrastructure financing that was held. The 2021 MTPPS pronouncement indicates a measured move towards the realization of the aspects previously raised by SALGA. Hence, I think our stance in our commentary in that we support this move. And then towards building capable local government, the MTPPS on page 48 also make a statement that many municipalities have insufficient capacity to fulfill their financial responsibilities. This is evident in over-reliance on external financial consultants, where municipalities have spent over 1 billion on financial reporting consultants in the 2019-2020 municipal financial year, even though reporting is a core responsibility of their internal finance units. Further juxtaposing this to the promise contained in the white paper, accountability, transparency, and good governance, accounting and financial reporting procedures should minimize opportunities for corruption and malpractice. In this aspect, the SALGA NEC had made resolutions on 18th June 2020, and when they were considering the 18-19 MFMA audit outcomes, as well as on 30 June 2021, when the NEC was considering the 19-20 MFMA audit outcomes on measures to extract accountability and consequence management from municipalities with poor audit outcomes and those that lack sound financial management practices. Further, the measures adopted by the organization to extract accountability and consequence management were tabled at the budget forum on 21 August 2020. And there was a report that was presented jointly by SALGA and COGTA under the topic governance and leadership. And in those deliberations, the aspect of consequence management and extracting accountability was agreed to by the forum and its aspects that we are actually implementing. Further, in relation to the overuse of financial consultants, SALGA has communicated with top 20 municipalities featuring in the 2019-2020 MFMA audit outcomes to establish the extent of these municipalities adhering to regulations pertaining to the use of consultants in relation to the transfer of skills and consultancy reduction plans that are required when these consultants are appointed. And SALGA further directed that these municipalities conduct skills assessment of their finance units, which is what we're monitoring. In line with the SALGA NEC resolution cited above, SALGA is seized with various other measures to extract accountability and consequence management for the resources allocated to the local government sphere. I think this also accords with the opening remarks of the chairperson. Further, on igniting growth through diversifying electricity or energy sources, the speech delivered by the minister on 11 November makes reference to that. We have already made significant progress in correcting this. The amendment of Schedule 2 of the Electricity Regulation Act of 2006 has raised licensing threshold from 1 to 100 megawatts. It has also made it possible for private power generators to sell directly to customers. This will alleviate the risk of power cuts. The amended regulation will further enable municipalities to self-generate or procure power directly from independent power producers. We've also begun to reduce our reliance on ESCOM by diversifying our primary energy sources. We've juxtaposed this as well to the white paper, particularly as it relates to local government responsibility on the provision of electricity as a service. In terms of our comments, SALGA welcomes the amended Schedule 2 exemption from obligation to apply for and hold a license, which has increased the licensing threshold from 1 to 1,000 to 100 megawatts, exempted from holding the generation license that was gazetted on 20 August 2021. We view this as a positive gain for the industry, in particular local government, and a positive development that will unlock substantive private investment in new generation capacity, and it will rapidly alleviate the ongoing power generation capacity shortfalls and load shedding in South Africa. In fact, the amended Schedule 2 is a direct response to the SALGA 2018 Energy Summit resolutions. Further, we observe that the Schedule 2 amendment has leveled the playing field and will enable municipalities and private investors as partners to implement renewable energy projects speedily without a delay caused by rigorous licensing application processes. Still on igniting growth through diversifying electricity, this talks through to the renewable energy IPPs, where the minister made reference as well to the 25 projects that are part of the latest round of bid window 5. Also, juxtaposing this to the white paper, as reflected there, the renewable energy with the independent power producers program has been the IPPs and the Department of Minerals and the Department of Minerals, Resources and Energy and ESCOM partnership, with no room for local government to participate. This program is a single buyer model program which only pronounces ESCOM as the main role player in buying the power from the IPPs. We as SALGA note that a single buyer model may not be sustainable in the future, in that should in an event that ESCOM, for one reason or the other, has got financial challenges, the trickle-down effect in terms of when they increase their pricing and eliminate competition, these will ultimately trickle down through to the consumers at the end of the day. One of the SALGA 2018 Energy Summit declarations was that the current regulatory environment is inhibiting instead of enabling the transition, where neither the energy transition nor the role of local government are acknowledged within the RP. A progressive policy would be to allow municipalities as organs of state to apply to the minister to procure new generation capacity in accordance with the RP. And then on igniting growth through improvement of bulk water, the reference was made particularly to the water sector. The legislative drafting and financial modeling have been done to establish a national water resource infrastructure agency responsible for improving the management of bulk water resources. The Department of Water and Sanitation is fast-tracking its application process to ensure that the 90-day target for issuing single-use water licenses would be implemented by March 2022 as part of improving ease of doing business. Further, with reference to the white paper, SALGA comments that the establishment of the National Water Resource Infrastructure Agency was pronounced in SONA, and the MTBPS is providing feedback on the progress to date. SALGA supports the establishment of the National Water Resources Infrastructure Agency and appreciate the feedback outlined in the MTBPS to this end, it would be important to SALGA to be afforded an opportunity to reflect on the legislative framework and financial modeling anticipated to govern the establishment process with the relevant sector department. This pronouncement is welcome. It is our understanding that already the issuance of water licenses within the 90 days is being implemented in fast-tracking the rollout of the water SIP's project. Now, in summarizing the SALGA's position on the medium-term budget policy statement, as well as the Division of Revenue Bill, SALGA acknowledges the tough economic and fiscal environment that the country finds itself, and further exacerbated by the significant negative impact that COVID has brought upon the economy. SALGA supports the government in reducing the budget deficit and stabilizing the debt to GDP ratio. SALGA supports the macroeconomic strategy of the government, including fiscal consolidation to cap additional spending and maintain the expenditure ceiling. The increase in social spending to minimize the impact of COVID-19 on households is well received. Coming through to our conclusions and recommendations. The COVID-19 has exacerbated the South African economic crisis, particularly hitting social spending. This calls for structural reforms on public finances by exercising restraint and prudent financial management. A positive economic outlook will only be realized through sustained monetary and fiscal support. The South African economy grew faster than expected in the first half of the 2021 financial year, 2021-2022, but this momentum is expected to wane following public violence in July, port and rail disruptions, and the third wave of the COVID-19 infections. The real GDP is forecast to grow by 5.1% in 2021, and household consumption has improved, but has not fully recovered from the pandemic. In line with government's commitment to support vulnerable households, particularly given the impact of COVID-19, additional resources for social protection will be considered if the fiscal situation improves by February 2022. Hence, we will note that in the MTPPS statement, the increased revenue that has been realized due to the higher commodity pricing has then been used to narrow the budget deficit, such then that it can set a solid base going forward to ensure that the debt to GDP ratio over time is actually reduced, as it is projected that by the 2024-2025, a budget surplus process will unfold. In such an instance, then what is being contained in the budget, where the share of the local sphere of government will ultimately start seeing an upward trajectory. In light of this commentary, Chairperson, the organized local government supports the Division of Revenue Bill. I thank you.
Thank you so thank you so much for the yeah, Mr. Baloyi and Mr. Mkoki for the presentation. What we'll do, I'll be requesting the honorable members to ask questions, and please just note the questions and their responses, so that after they've finished, you'll have an opportunity to reflect on what they would have asked or would have said. So thank you, honorable members. It's your turn. Can I have an indication of the honorable members who would like to comment or ask questions on the presentation by SALGA? You know how we do it.
Matafa.
Honorable Matafa,
Mlenzana,
Honorable Mlenzana,
Honorable Sonyana,
Honorable Srenyana, Honorable members,
Kaiso.
Honorable Kaiso. Okay, anybody else? In the absence of any other member would like to come in. Honorable Matafa, you know how we do it. You've got 5 minutes to ask your questions.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good morning to yourself, honorable members, and the SALGA team. Maybe, Chair, let me start first by thanking Ndate Bongani for the role that he has played in local government and wish him well in the future, and hopefully he will not be lost to local government. Thank you for the presentation, Chair. It's really empowering. I'm going to be very brief, but only focus mainly on issues that affect voters as those that are mandated to local government. Yesterday, we had deliberations with other stakeholders reflecting on the same reports. And two of the main issues that came out was lack of capacity in municipalities to be able to execute their mandate, amongst others, manage finances prudently, deliver quality service, enhance local economic development, and provide effective oversight. Now, we know that SALGA has programs aimed at capacity building. My questions are twofold. Firstly, is why is the problem of lack of capacity seems to be persistent when SALGA, jointly with the National Treasury, have programs that are aimed at capacitating local government? Now, there can be a myriad of issues, but one of the issues might be that the programs that are being offered by SALGA and others are not necessarily fit for purpose or are not relevant to prevailing circumstances. I just wanted to find out what is the view of SALGA as far as these problems persisting, because for us, we expect to see some improvement, which it does not happen. And the development of such programs, understanding SALGA as a composition of various municipalities, what is the consultative process to ensure that these programs are well received by all other stakeholders and members of SALGA? The second point, Chair, which also we see as an unfair development for voters who have expectations on local government, is the lack of spending of grants that are provided from the national fiscus. And it becomes a problem because these are not just funds that are allocated for the sake of it. Some of them are specific for particular programs that have been identified as the core needs of the communities. What efforts are there from SALGA to ensure that their members are able to spend accordingly? Yes, it might be related to lack of capacity, but in the intervening period, what efforts is SALGA making to ensure that these particular grants are spent and are spent prudently? The other one, Chair, is also in terms of the internal operations of local government. There's a requirement of bulk suppliers to be paid on time. There's a requirement that invoices, particularly those of SMMEs, should be paid within 30 days. It is common knowledge that that is not happening. What is SALGA's role as far as that is concerned? Because that also speaks to the efficiency of local government. Are there any programs, are there any means that can be employed so that SALGA is able to intervene in the affairs of their members to ensure that this particular spending requirements are adhered to? So, Chair, for now, I wanted to pause on those three that speak to the issues that affect voters directly. And maybe just as a parting shot, the outcomes of the local government has presented to us a challenge of many coalitions in the country. What is the view of SALGA in terms of the likelihood of the stability of these coalitions persisting, and how are they likely to impact on service delivery? Coming from Tshwane, I do not know what service delivery is for the past 5 years, because the EFF and DA coalition kept on collapsing on a drop of a head. So we are having the same situation again now. Now, this is not going to be only affecting the residents of Tshwane, but it seems to be a national outcome. What is SALGA's outlook, and how are they readying themselves to be able to deal with this particular issue, given the fact that I know the leading party in many metros, which is the Democratic Alliance, did not recognize SALGA. How are we going to interface to ensure that they come to the party? And where SALGA seems to be willing to intervene, these particular coalitions are responsive to the interventions by SALGA. I will pause there, Chair. Thank you very much for the opportunity to participate in the discussion.
Thank you, Honorable Matafa. Honorable Mlenzana, can you please come in?
Thank you, Chairperson, and let me also join.
Sorry, Honorable, my apologies, Honorable Mlenzana. Can you please remove the presentation from the screen?
Okay.
I would like to see the honorable members.
So, Darren, are you trying?
On a lighter note, Chair.
Yes,
If you would have seen me, you would have realized that our wives advise us to wear the same suits. It looks.
Me and you.
I've noticed that. I've noticed.
Yeah, there we are.
I've noticed that. Chairperson, good morning to you and honorable members, and greetings to the teams, Salga and COSATU in the platform. And let me also join Honorable Matafa in welcoming the presentation. It's a tough time for you, Salga, at this point in time. I would understand, yes, you may be smiling when you are saying, as you present to us now, you are actually out of employment, but would pray that you be well in the next point of call. You have actually been with us and we journeyed, and you have been a pillar of assistance to us as this committee. So, Chairperson, we are welcoming the presentation by Salga. Just a few things, Chairperson, for me. I had challenges with the presentation. I'm in Parliament, but for the first time, that there is connectivity challenges here. Chairperson, if Salga could talk to us on the repurposing of the municipal systems improvement grant to the district development program. You know, Chairperson, I'm glued into the DDM. Now, what is the position of Salga in terms of this proposition by National Treasury? That is one. It may be generic. But also, how will this repurposing streamline and improve capacity building of the local government sector in light of the deteriorating audit outcomes? You would know, Chairperson, that whilst I'm in this committee, I'm also passionate about audit outcomes. I think Salga should understand. And then lastly, around this one, the Honorable Matafa spoke of incapacity within municipalities, where a majority of municipalities are unable to fulfill their financial responsibilities. Hence, you would notice that we always get this from the Auditor General, Chairperson, that a majority of municipalities have got what one would call over-reliance on external financial consultants. Now, How does SALGA find a way, be it for now or in the long term, of mitigating this challenge? Because if we can remain with it, it means it will be perpetual. And also, what specific and different actions that will SALGA take or propose as a solution to the problem of incapacity within municipality? I'm raising this, Chairperson, understanding the manner in which Honorable Matafa has raised this thing, but I'm more on the financial management side of issues. The last one, Chair, would be on, there is this increase in terms, even if you listen to your news, that local businesses are threatening to relocate businesses from certain municipalities owing to lack of service delivery. How is SALGA engaging with these municipalities to ensure that they support the local economic development and any try to curb whatever disinvestment by local businesses, which results, because at the end of the day, if there is that disinvestment, there will be job losses, drop in the economy in these various municipalities. And lastly, Chair, how are municipalities capacitated to ensure that they create an environment that is conducive to investment, creation of local industries, and supports job creation? Let me pause for now, Chairperson. Given chance, I will come back, but at least I think I've lifted those which I think are critical. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Mlenzana. Honorable Hlonyana, please come in.
Thank you very much, Chair. You see, Chairperson, Honorable Matafa what home wambona ke. What is starting those things. Let me just put here, Chair, so that he understands. We were never in coalition with anybody as the EFF. Don't blame those things of the DA to us. Must never start.
No,
Anyways,
but you have got marriages with DA.
Chair, we have to protect it. Protected.
Honorable Hlonyana, please continue.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's just that Jesus has arrived in Tshwane, Kuruleni, and in Johannesburg. And in Kizio as a Chair. But anyway, Chair, thank you very much, Chairperson. Chair, let us welcome the report. And Chair, first and foremost, I just wanted to speak to the projections. As they were presenting today, they said to us the projection, the fiscal surplus, they feel like it will be in the positive. Fiscals will be in the surplus in 2024, 2025. I just want to check with SALGA. Do they think these projections are realistic? And do they think this will happen, or this is just a wishful thinking from the ANC government? Secondly, Chair, local government is the most important sphere in governance. And I believe SALGA's job is to make sure that municipalities delivers to the people, especially the poor of the poor. My question to SALGA will be, what are you doing to monitor? And what interventions are you doing to make sure that the deliveries happen? Especially in municipalities where everything is just bad, like that Mangaung there, that Mangaung. What is SALGA doing? I mean, challenges of water, refuge is not collected. It's so bad that it's now in a stage of, it's no longer even collapsing, it's collapsed. So what is SALGA going to do about it to assist municipalities that SALGA? That SALGA, you were not created for ANC-led municipalities, but you were created to assist municipalities. So as you face now the new wave which is arriving, where you find that the ANC government will be on the opposition benches in the local governments, we need you to be understanding of the change, and you need to adapt. Because if you don't want to adapt, you know what happens when people refuse to adapt. Let's make sure that the training that we give to our councillors is of high quality, not just a certificate, chair, but it must be of high quality, and they must be able to understand. Because one of the scariest things that we've come to realize is that councillors are councillors for 5 years, but when they leave, they have absolutely no understanding of how council is run. So let's make sure that when you design those educational programs for councillors, let's make sure that it is something that is going to educate them to know and understand, not just for them to have a certificate in the end of the day. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Hlonyana. Honorable Kaiso.
Yeah, thank you very much, Honorable Chair and presenter from Salga, Mr. Bungani. I just have, I do not have many questions to engage on, but to reflect back on what was raised previously during the DORA 2020 by Salga. I think Salga raised a number of critical areas there, but I just want to venture into the same. The issue of capacity, Chairperson, and I mean, Salga at that time raised the issue of technical capacity, managerial and leadership challenges generally. And then now I just want to check from Mr. Baloyi or from Salga as to whether has this been addressed now in as far as Salga is concerned, because now if you look at the performance of a number of or majority of municipalities, the performance has been very poor, which resulted actually in collapsing of number of municipalities. Now I'm taking this area of technical, managerial and leadership. Are you now convinced that this has been addressed, given those circumstances which has arisen at those collapsed municipalities? Because as my colleagues have alluded before, the use of consultancy, it does prove otherwise. But I don't know as to how you're going to respond, but it does seem that now the presence of consultancy, it does tell us a different message. So unless perhaps you would agree with me that now the presence of consultancy, usage of consultancy in a majority of municipalities, it is a symbol or a sign that now a number of municipalities have not arrived at a situation where there is a proper technical or managerial leadership that is required. So that's one question that I wanted to check with you. Now, the issue of, I don't know what is the Salga's taking, because this one is perpetual, Honorable Chair. The issue of lack of spending is perpetual. I hear and understand what Salga is raising in terms of, you know, the pie chart there, which has been displayed to say the national has received so much and the national has received so much. But then the biggest enemy that we are facing as a committee that confronts us is the issue of lack of spending, which is a major problem that that we are facing with the departments. Now, it's even now worse when it comes to even local municipalities where there hasn't been sufficient spending and there's poor service delivery and there's protest, that causes a lot of uncomfort, unnecessary inconvenience to the people for services that they were supposed to be receiving. But because of this lack of spending, there's no proper, response to the issues that have been raised by people. Now, I want to understand that to what an extent is SALGA assisting in that particular matter, because the issue of lack of spending, it's the biggest enemy. And there's also very less consequent management, which result as a lack of spending that we often see. Thirdly, Chair, is on the issue of there has been a turnaround strategy document which was produced long ago. I think it's around 1998, if I'm not mistaken, during the former. It was produced by the former, the late minister, may his soul rest in peace, Shicelo Shiceka. That turnaround strategy document, it is still the one that is being used as a model to fund local municipalities. So I think it is at this stage, despite the fact that there is lack of spending, but generally there has to be a new, revised or reviewed strategy which will look holistically as to the funding of local municipalities. As you would understand that now there are different forms of revenue, differs because of the size of municipalities, et cetera, et cetera. But what I'm saying overall, there is a need that now that document is still being used, it still has to be reviewed to fit the issue of the district development model. It should be well integrated. So in the turnaround strategy or revised funding model to accommodate even the district development model quite well. So I think let me pause at this stage, Honorable Chair. I will come back if there's anything. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Kaiso. Honorable Matafa, do you still have something you'd like to say, or a question which has come to your mind? Honorable Matafa. Honorable Mlenzana.
Yes, Chairperson, just one thing, Chairperson, if you don't mind. On the infrastructure fund, I understand that SALGA aims to target the financing of refurbishment of the existing infrastructure through the fund, the infrastructure fund. Now, in the opinion of SALGA, should municipalities not be able to fund the maintenance and repair and refurbishment of their own infrastructure from their own budgets, as they have the ability to raise their own revenue? I'm raising this, Chairperson, so that perhaps what we can do, we can begin to scale the muscle per municipality. If a particular municipality has got enough revenue to begin to deal with infrastructure-related issues, they do that. And it's just a question of add-on on our side through the infrastructure fund. Thanks, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Lenzan. Honorable Shonyana.
No, I'm okay, Chairperson.
Thank you so much, Honorable Kaiso.
Yeah, no, Chair. Honorable Shonyani, you need not worry, really. about whether we'll be in an opposition bench or what. It's our own baby, that one. So you know what you did in Medzimahulu and Nkwakwa. Yeah, don't worry, it's our own. We're going to deal with the situation there. So we're fine. We know what we're going to do.
Okay, no further question. Honourable members, just hold on your fire. There is a debate on Tuesday, so I think you'll have an opportunity when it comes to that. I think let me come in. Honourable Mataf, are you back?
Yes, I'm back, Chair.
I was saying, do you have any other additional question you would like to?
No, I'm covered. Thank you very much, Chair.
Okay, that's fine. Again, let me join my colleagues, the honorable members, in welcoming the presentation by Salga, and thank you very much. And again, thank Mr. Bongani Baloyi, former councillor, for the work that they've done in interacting with us. Let me start. Here's my first question. What is the oversight mechanism of SALGA? Because I'm sure that's one of the primary responsibilities, to oversight the proper performance of the municipality. What is that mechanism? Why I'm asking it, for instance, I'm sure you'll be able, that if you had proper oversight mechanism, you'll be able to see, even before the public complain, that there are a lot of potholes in this town, that refuse is not being collected, just to ensure that the primary services of municipalities are being performed. That's one. And while one is asking questions, I think, let me throw this one in. I think as the committee, irrespective of the government and municipality, our interest is in ensuring that the people in that municipality receive services. It's even more important because, as you all know, that the majority of people who are residing in these municipalities are the poorest of the poor. So it's so important that we always ensure that those people are not left out as the services are being delivered. It should be immaterial for those people who's in government, but as this committee, when we appropriate money to local government, as you know, that we never look as to which part is there. We say this goes to local government, and that's why we should be looking at, be concerned about lack of service delivery and the wastage of monies at that level of government. My other question, the usage of consultants. We're saying in the last financial year, about R1 billion was used for consultants. But I get worried when SALGA says we've called for skills audit. There's no skills audit needed there. We know that financial skills are not adequate. They are either not there or not adequate. And I always see that in most cases, again, these consultants, they come and prepare the annual financial statements. That's after the effect. You can get the highest form of skills at that time. The horse has already bolted. You need financial skills from the beginning of the financial year so that there are proper plans, there are proper accountability, ensuring that all the policies are being followed from the start of or the beginning of the financial year. When it comes to auditing, it's after the effect. So I'm saying that there may be this thing of skills auditing, but the most important thing, from where we are seated, we know that the financial skills are amongst the skills that are lacking. So SALGA should tell us what they are doing about that. One of the strategists argue that when you see a problem, don't behave like someone who, when he sees a snake, he says, let me go and get a consultant to decide how am I going to kill the snake. You must kill the snake. So we know what the problem is. So what we should be asking, what is SALCA doing to ensure that we get proper skills there? From your side, I think Honorable Mlenzana has spoken about one grant, and which are the grants that are consistently and perennially being underspent from your side, and what do you understand the problem to be, and what do you think should be done to deal with that? Another question. We welcome the progress which is being made in ensuring that there is a security of supply of energy. But on top of that, I'm sure there are many other things that the municipalities should be looking at to ensure that, one, we retain the businesses which are there, but secondly, that we attract new investments into our municipalities. What are those other things? Saying the obvious, that for our economies to grow, it is important that you have got investments. So what are these other things that we can do differently to ensure that we attract investments to our municipalities? In the submission by National Treasury, we noted that the repurposing of the Municipal Systems Improvement Grant to the DTM, again, I think Honorable Mlenzana raised this one, that we wanted to get the position of SALCA when it comes to this. Again, on slide 18, I've alluded to this. You mentioned that you are committed and you assist with measures to enhance accountability for the resources allocated to local government sphere. Can you be more specific? What do you mean about that? And again, it's oversight and accountability. I've spoken about this. There's a significant number of municipalities being placed under administration. How is SALCA supporting municipalities to reform and acquire skilled human capital to ensure effective service delivery, and that the local government sector as a whole continues to work towards the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals? How is SALCA partnering with local corporate firms and interacting with the Presidential Youth Employment Initiative to create new jobs and stimulate economic activities in a well-defined economic zone and in municipalities? I think we have given you a mouthful, and as you would look at these questions, is the committee responding to some of the shortcomings that we've identified. But let me ask the last one. You say we are committed to working with the Infrastructure Fund to support municipalities to develop feasible and bankable infrastructure plans. To assess funding is welcome, because it was previously this inaction that led to the municipalities like Msunduzi, Buffalo City, and Bombena being suspended from the Integrated Public Transport Network grant. This has been a source spot to this committee, the question of Integrated Public Transport Network grant, which has not been effectively used. In fact, it has been suspended now. The obvious consequences: no investment, no growth of those economies, jobs are being lost, and so on and so forth. Please, SALCA, engage with those questions. I'll hand back to you, Mr. Baloyi and Mr. Mkuk.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the members for those set of questions. Chair, I'm going to approach them in the following manner. I'm going to deal with the easy questions, and then Babu Neba is going to assist me dealing with the more difficult ones at the end. But let me make the following statements. It's quite important because I think there's a very big perception about us as SALGA, and more so the perception linking SALGA directly to the work of the executive in relevant municipalities. And I think for this purpose, in our minds, we must settle the difference, and there must be a solid understanding and a difference understood between what SALGA is, what SALGA does, but equally in local authorities, who is the relevant executive and where accountability and monitoring over and oversight of what is happening in those relevant by those relevant executives in those localities where the accountability and oversight must rest. And I think part of the questions has the implication that SALGA must physically do the work in those municipalities by ensuring that we respond to every and all challenge happening in municipalities. But Chair, I think the accountability must actually extend to people or the relevant executive, which is the relevant one in this case, Chair, because if you look at the MFMA, there's no part in the MFMA which says a municipality in a form of either a Section 52D report or Section 72 report must send to SALGA within 30 days after a quarter or 30 days or the same month, or etc. But it says it specifically about two departments or ministries. It says it about the MEC of Finance, MEC of Cooperative Governance, and so does that refer to the Minister of Finance and Minister of Cooperative Governance. So Chair, when you ask about, so there's a specific set of questions that need to be asked directly to those two departments and ministries, either in the form of MECs or ministers as well. But Chair, let me just go through systematically to some of the questions. So generally, I think the question has been repeated of what is SALGA doing with the number of challenges faced in municipalities, either issues of underspending, councillors' capacitation, or issues where there's a perceived lack of capacity in finance, where it results in over-reliance to the external service providers. So Chair, in terms of the annual performance plan that SALGA has approved, we've got a predetermined target in terms of the capacity building in what areas where we believe that there's a skill shortage, where we must assess municipality through capacity building. And over and above the capacity building in terms of our APP, we also have targets which speak to having strategic partnerships with institutions that can assist local government. And there's various institutions that we get closer to local government, whether international or national institutions, where local governments can actually extract value and assistance and be able to lean on some of the capacities that they have as well. So SALGA runs those capacities, but Chair, those capacity building programs. But Chair, often the challenge here arises and it becomes, when we offer the capacity building to municipalities, there's a presumption that officials who are occupying those positions meet the necessary requirements for those positions, which is academic experience, etc., etc. So Chair, then the question must arise then, when you appreciate that there is sometimes or often a lack of these, when you find in these municipalities, then you must ask the question, who's employing these people? Which trigger the issue of lack of capacity. And if we are to believe that there is indeed a shortage of skill in finance, which I don't necessarily share the view, Chair, because it's not anything that one can systematically approve or give very evidence to suggest that. Instead, Chair, it's pointing towards a trend where people whom should not be appointed for those positions, who are not suitably qualified for those positions, end up being appointed. And that's, Chair, part of a process where there's a concerted approach to weaken the governance, to weaken the institutions, the systems, the processes, in an attempt to possibly get in consultants. So it does not happen by mistake that you'd find that in the past financial year, R1 billion was spent on consultants, and yet in the same municipalities that spent close to R1 billion, there's material misstatements in those very same financial statements which the municipalities use external service providers for when there's warm bodies for those positions. So, Chair, I think there's also a very important questions we need to ask about the municipal manager who presides over the municipality from an administrative point of view, who must ensure that the relevant requirement of positions or people who should be appointed are appointed, and that there isn't any political interference in that. So that, Chair, I was just responding to the issue of capacity building, but equally the issue of linking over reliance of consultants. And Chair, I think we must start calling it what it is. It's actually criminal behavior to an extent, Chair, because there's warm bodies who are appointed for those positions who don't do what they should do. Instead of doing what they should be doing, they then give the work to consultants who don't even do a good job because the work results in financial financial misstatements in those financial statements, Chair. How do we enhance accountability at SALGA? So the question must also be understood within the following context. SALGA is the Association of Local Governments. The member municipalities have their relevant executives, whom are discharged, who are given within the confines of the law, are the ones who must provide strategic direction and oversight over their local authorities. And in terms of the MFMA, still they must report directly to the MEC of Cooperative Governance and MEC of Finance, and so it goes up to the Minister of Finance and Minister of Cooperative Governance. So there's a direct accountability flow in terms of the legal framework. So as SALGA, Chair, we don't necessarily go there and monitor every day your performance in terms of what we're doing, because remember what the essence of SALGA is. We represent the sector, we lobby for the sector. Now we are speaking about the infrastructure grant, which is repurposed, Chair, and SALGA is giving inputs representing the sector and raising issues such as what is the criteria which must be used to ensure that all municipalities are given a fair lending in terms of competing for that, and how decisions are made about one thing or the other. So representing the sector, but it's interest of the sector. So at times there's a belief and thinking that SALGA should be the one actually remedying each and every ill happening in local government, forgetting that SALGA in fact represents the sector, but is not the relevant authority in those local municipalities. Then there's a question about why are grants underspent. Now let's look at the value. The response is in understanding of the value chain of spending a capital grant. I'm going to focus on a capital grant in this case. So what is the value chain of a capital grant, or any CAPEX for that matter? One, there must be a spec which must be drafted by an official. At times, the spec is not drafted correctly. It's also drafted in a manner which favors one particular company. So it could be one of those two or many other variables at the drafting of the spec. Then the draft specification is then taken to the internal committee, which looks at the bid spec, which confirms the specification, and it allows it to continue, or it's referred back. That could take between 1 week and 4 weeks. And this happens generally after a new budget has been approved in the new financial year. It could start in the first week, or in fact in mid-July. So that could happen between one week and 4 weeks. In the event that the response from this bid spec internally is that it must proceed, then it goes out to be advertised. That could take 30 days. And for it to get into the media could take, in fact, the first 2 weeks to ensure that you pay the newspaper. It takes it through the process as advert, and then 30 days. So it means now you're 6 weeks into it. So it's initially 4 weeks maximum. Now it's 6 weeks maximum to get into the next process. And the next process, then after the advert has been closed, then you've got the evaluation of it, which happens again can happen between 1 week and 3 weeks. After the evaluation, then there's the adjudication, which is almost the final step. And the adjudication could still happen between a week and 3 weeks. So if we look at the time frame, in fact, the first quarter is completely out. The first quarter of the new financial year is completely out. And assuming that there hasn't been any challenges, there hasn't been any refer backs, and in fact, if the skill required to be able to draft the necessary specification is there, and at times we find that it's not there. So the question of why is there underspending is actually a complex question, where the issues why there is underspending is part of the entire value chain of the spending of CAPEX. We've not even gotten to a stage where a successful, after the adjudication, a successful service provider is appointed, then there's initiation of the project in the particular community. Then there's issues around local spend, etc., and who must be appointed, how they must be appointed, and the stop-start, which is linked at times to issues of politics and community unrest, which frustrates the entire thing. So what does SALGA do? We assist in drafting of specification capacity, in ensuring that people understand what are the basic things that you must have, etc., to be able to do so. And at times, Chair, some municipalities don't even have the mechanisms or some warm bodies in these key positions to be able to take it forward and fulfill it. And at times now, in a very competitive environment, Chair, you find that very often some of these awards are successfully or are challenged, and some successfully challenged in the court of law, which also frustrates the process of being able to deliver. Chair. So some of the challenges lie in the value chain that I've spoken about. The issue of consultants, I think I've spoken about, and the oversight mechanisms. We really try, Chair, because we have to really not try add too much cumbersome requirements in local municipalities outside of the stipulated reporting mechanism in terms of the law, either Section 52D report, which they send to MEC of Cooperative Governance and MEC of Treasury, and the Section 7102 reports, Chair. So we within that framework, but we also assist where there is capacity, but we don't run the municipalities ourselves. So I think there's a deeper question that needs to be asked to the relevant executives, Chair, but equally over and above the relevant executives in the localities, the MECs themselves, which my personal opinion is that they're actually complicit to some of the misdemeanors happening in local government by lack of actually acting on the basis of these legal reports that are given to them, the statutory reports that they are given, that they're reported to their offices. Chair, the next question, why in terms the infrastructure fund, why must the fund pay for refurbishing of the old or the current infrastructure, and why should we not utilize our own resources? So Chair, it's common knowledge that the unemployment in our country is growing. So where does unemployment manifest physically? And when there's COVID issues and people are laid at home and they're sitting and they're not really working, that manifests in local governments. And we've seen a strain on local government in terms of revenues that have been collected. For an example, Midval was able to collect on excess on average for the past 3-4 financial years on average about 94%. But with a high number of unemployment, you feel it in your lack of collection. And there's competing requirements or competing priorities in the municipality, whether you've got infrastructure that's linked to your water, infrastructure linked to your sewer, infrastructure linked to your electricity. And the rate of growth of population, when you utilize what you have, what you can do in terms of the strength of your balance sheet, you can only do 1 or 2. But you can't really fix the entire system. You do a patchwork for over a gradual period of time, while the strain on your infrastructure is growing at a rapid rate, but yet your ability to respond and stabilize and grow with new infrastructure is not coming. Is not being dealt with adequately. And remember, Chair, it's our residents who are given the resource. You get a grant from national government to build an infrastructure. After getting a grant to build an infrastructure, there's no subsequent grant to be able to refurbish that infrastructure. It's now passed to the burdens your ratepayers, where we must try and collect revenue, deliver all trading services within the affordability of our residents, and which becomes a strain. And part of it is that our own revenue sources and our own balance sheet does not allow for us to be able to invest in such a manner which ensures that we can give consistency and reliability of services and assure our local business communities that this is a place they need to be and they can't move. So it's one of the reasons which leads to a deterioration of services, of infrastructure in an area. And that's also linked. If you look across the board in rural municipalities, they don't have a resource pool. They don't have a revenue base that's sufficient enough for them to run themselves and become a sustainable and ongoing concern. Now, let alone if they can't do that, how are they going to be able to use their own limited revenue to be able to invest in the infrastructure? So I think that's the response to that question. The turnaround strategy, Chair, I note that question, but I'm also inclined to also go a little bit further and refer to some of the comments that Ngaba was mentioning in the presentation, where he was saying if you look at the white paper of local government, which was the founding document for local government and gave birth to a number of the assumptions of local government and how local government must be funded, that same document has not been reviewed over the years. And we've lived through some of the assumptions, and you also see that there's weaknesses in it. So I think the local government white paper needs to definitely be reviewed. And I know there is a process which has started with the cooperative governance and Treasury to start looking at some of those. The issue of consultants, I think I've spoken to again. Then the next set of questions is Honorable Shonyana, Honorable Fighter. The first question you asked was about the fiscal, the surplus, which according to the presentation we showed would be a surplus, I think by 2024, we believe that. I think we got that from the minister's speech. We've got no reason to doubt it at this stage. I think we're starting to see the positive trend and performance in our economy, albeit there will be some challenges as a result of the winter protest, but we are hopeful that we can be able to achieve that, because there'll be some positive spin-offs for all of us, in particular local government, and probably the acceleration of spending in the public sector for infrastructure. How do we monitor the performance of municipalities? Again, I've spoken to that part, and I really want to emphasize this, because I really think that some of these ministries or departments in province are really getting away with murder and complicit, because in terms of the law, it's stipulated in the law what report must be tabled to who by when, and then the question must always be, when you see a quarterly report, in fact, even broken down to monthly report, that things are not happening, things are not moving, what are you doing? Because there's a statutory law which says it must be sent to you by this period of time. What are then the mechanisms you put in place to be able to respond, to mitigate against a worse off performance in quarter 3, 4, in quarter 2, 3, and 4 potentially? I can reliably say to you, Honorable Flanyane, that the SALGA is apolitical. Currently, if you look at Gauteng as an example, it includes various political parties in the PEC, and in our NEC, we also include various political parties. I think SALGA is a very stable institution, and SALGA has actually been at the forefront of speaking to various ministries, and in particular the Cooperative Governance Ministry, about what we foresee would happen in our sector. And we've been really trying to start in a key engagement about what are we going to do when there's coalitions across the country, which led us to put together a guide document of how we can navigate issues of coalition agreements. So there's a document that SALGA has put out, and SALGA will definitely be engaging with the ministry, with various political parties. And I think that that's a resolution of SALGA to ensure that we need to engage with the various political parties to sensitize them with the work that SALGA is doing, but to also have a space where we can engage and see how they can derive value out of SALGA. But equally, we believe that SALGA's mandate in the advocacy of local government must not just stop at engaging members in a particular portfolio committee, but we must also go to members in their political parties to better lobby for local government positions across the board. Then the questions asked by Honorable Tenzana, so how will we improve the issue of audit outcomes related to skills issues, etc., etc.? Various municipalities have various committees to do specific things, whether audit committees, and SALGA does assist with capacity for audit committees and all of these. But the question we actually, I think, running away from, Honorable Chair, in as much as SALGA can capacitate leadership of municipalities, but SALGA, members must appreciate that we are finding serious challenges with the leadership of some of these municipalities. And the SALGA does not elect members or suggest members must be put as members of mayoral candidates or councillors. All of these happens in political parties. So I think, Chair, there's also a conversation that needs to be had with political parties about the quality and standard of people or that they put as representatives, because we can't run away from that. Public representatives come from political parties, and if a public representative does not have some level of academic or work experience, it definitely does jeopardize it. So how do you expect an individual who does not have financial knowledge or financial understanding to be able to provide or give oversight over a 1.3 billion rand institution and be able to interrogate and understand financial statements? That ultimately weakens the process. And that ultimately is the start of rotting of the fish from the head, because you've got leadership which is not capable to deal with the complex environment and be able to interrogate, give strategic strategic direction and various other responsibilities in terms of the law. So from there, you start weakening the institution from the very top, which ultimately then creates an environment where you don't attract your talent, you can't do your forward planning properly, you weaken the institution and the governance in the institution, and that manifests with the increase of fruitless, irregular, and wasteful expenditure, and also appointing people who should not be appointed for those positions. In the other questions, Chair, that I've made a note of, what is SALGA's view of the stability of the coalitions? Well, firstly, I can say with confidence that SALGA is quite ecstatic with the fact that councils have been established, that the executive and the legislative side, being the speaker and the executive, have been elected. And we are really hoping that there will be a coalition or coalitions which are stable, that allow for the delivery of services to our residents. And we really call upon all political parties to prioritize residents first and be able to ensure that we continue with consistent delivery of services. We have put together, as I've said, a guideline for coalitions, and we are in the process to lobby relevant players to be able to utilize these guidelines. And we are really hoping that even the MECs of local government and Minister of Cooperative Governance keep their finger on the pulse to ensure that they do what they need to from a legal point of view, to ensure that the municipalities constitute their councils and are able to take decisions for the improvement and betterment of our communities and ensure that there's stability. It's going to be a fact of reality for us that we're going to live with for the next 5 years. So I really think that as a maturing democracy, we need to find the mechanisms to ensure that in as much as there may be political disagreement with other political parties in the coalition, we really need to ensure that the work of local government still continues by the institution, and it is not just continued instability after the other. The issue of some of the challenges where people are unpaid on time in terms of bulk suppliers and various invoices which should be paid in 30 days. We know the challenge. I think it's a grave challenge within municipalities. And one of the issues that may speak to this is issue of revenue collection. And what has SALGA done? We've put together various revenue collection strategies that focuses on mitigating water losses, electricity losses, and how to better comb through your debt book, and various strategies to be able to ensure that you collect as much as possible internally in the institution without going out externally. So we try and give those, but whether those are executed is something different. That ultimately it affects on the ability to pay your bulk services and suppliers and invoices as well. I think I've spoken about lack of spending and what may happen in the value chain of the lack of spending. Chair, I think I'll leave it there. I think I've dealt with the easy one. I'll leave Neba to just wrap up with those that I may have missed. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Baloyi, thank you. Quickly, perhaps Mr. Baloyi, as he comes in, he'll clarify some of certain things which are emanating from your input, right? For instance, we are correctly saying that you lobby for your members, but I guess it's to your interest to ensure that those you lobby for, their house is in order all round, because For instance, being here, that's what we are doing, but these questions are going to be asked for the people we are lobbying for. That's my first comment. And secondly, you gave us a long process of procurement, especially of infrastructure. My contention is that that doesn't happen at the local government level. Everybody who must procure in government must go through that. So as a body with members coming from that, I think it's something that would like to still live with you. How do you? Because if we were to take your explanation and live with it, it means we must just accept that this thing of underspending of grants is going to be perennial, is going to be there with us as long as local government exists. Mr. Mkoto, please come in.
Thank you, Chairperson. I am not alone. I've got my colleagues as well, Kumucho Litsatsi, who would then also speak through to some of the aspects that she might actually elaborate even better than I do. But the aspect that perhaps I would want to address, it relates particularly true to the question that you posed in relation to economic development as well as attracting investments, as to whether what is SALGA doing in that regard. What I would like to indicate on this area is that the National Working Group of SALGA on trade and investment is actually signed off on the municipal investment guidelines that SALGA developed that are aimed at providing practical guidelines on how to develop an investment promotion strategy and accompanying marketing materials, and how to develop and implement investor targeting, aftercare, and policy advocacy programs within a framework of effective investment facilitation. The purpose of the municipal investment guidelines is to provide municipalities with an investment strategy development toolkit that is based on best practice that will enable municipalities to undertake investment promotion and facilitate effectively, and facilitation, I mean, effectively, assist them to formulate and review their investment strategies, as well as assist municipalities to promote themselves as investment destinations, and provide strategies for municipalities to retain businesses and provide a conducive environment for business to expand. The toolkit is targeted at small, medium-sized municipalities and those with limited resources and expenditure in attracting inward investment. And currently, these investment guidelines are currently being piloted in 16 municipalities. These aspects talks through as well to the question that was raised earlier about the municipality, the relocation of business, I think by Honorable Mlenzana, particularly detailing as well on the relocation of business to a service delivery. So with this effort, SALGA is actually engaged in capacitating municipalities in an effort to ensure that the flight of a business in a specific locality does not occur. Further, SALGA has commissioned a municipalities competitiveness index that aims to identify investment push and pull factors in municipalities. Various municipalities will be ranked according to their strengths and weaknesses, and recommendations made to tackle the weaknesses identified. And still on this question, and lastly, our economic development unit is in discussion with an Egypt-based Africa Export-Import Bank called AfricSem to host the Municipal Dialogue on Africa Continental Free Trade Area early in 2022 that is aimed at exposing special economic zones, your SEZ, and municipalities to export markets in Africa, where the current intra-trade is only 18%. Should South African companies locate in the SEZs, in the special economic zones, those municipalities start to appreciate trade opportunities elsewhere in Africa, and their production and employment likely to increase. So there is work that SALGA is actually seized with in this area. And there was also a question on the area as to what is SALGA doing in relation to the interfacing with businesses in ensuring that there is economic activity and employment. Just looking at in interfacing with and having partnerships with businesses and other stakeholders in the process of ensuring employment creation and economic activity in various municipal areas. Firstly, I think SALGA is in a process of concluding a memoranda of agreement with the Small Business Institute, SBI in short. SBI is a not-for-profit organization constituted primarily to influence positive policy and legislative environment for small and medium-sized enterprises and to promote the economy and business interests of its members. SBI continually lobbies government and big business to consider and support the sustainability of SMEs in legislation, regulations, and procurement, as well as other policies. It is recognized that South African small business contributes roughly 30% to the country's GDP, and as well, it's got a potential to absorb about 70 to 80% of people into employment. The importance of the small business sector cannot be overemphasized, especially in light of the prevailing economic challenges, which have resulted in the large-scale shedding of jobs across different sectors of the economies. Further, there is another MOA that was concluded with Consulting Engineers South Africa, CESA, where both parties are cognizant of the various challenges that need to be addressed before the country can reach its infrastructure goals and stimulating economic growth and promoting employment. Now, there has also been a question detailing on the lack of spending of grants. In detailing that, one would also indicate that as SALGA, we had firstly had to identify the key institutional and environmental challenges that lead to poor infrastructure grant expenditure. And amongst what we had identified includes the inability to secure approval for rollover applications, the lack of planning resulting in late implementation of projects and lack of suitably qualified project managers, the procurement process that took longer, I think is alluded to by the NEC member, poor performance by contractors, and as well as contractors who then have cash flow problems, community protests, resulting in stoppages of projects. It's one of the aspects that we have identified. And the incidences of gang violence were abnormally high. These tend to result in several site shutdowns during the construction phase, thus resulting in slow progress on projects. And what we have also observed is that the spending pattern for capital projects does not ordinarily adopt a linear approach, as it is often depicted that it would be expected that a particular municipality would then spend 25% in the first quarter, and then cumulatively 50% in the second quarter, 75, and thereby 100. In terms of our observations, it follows like a hockey stick approach, where it starts quite low, then where the bulk of the expenditure, or roughly about 2/3, would then happen over the last quarter. So consequently, having cited the above, SALGA has developed a long-term plan to address infrastructure grant expenditure challenges. These are classified in the short term, as well medium term, as well long term. In the short term is capacity building on developing project pipelines, establish professional resource teams, research alternate capital expenditure monitoring approaches, and in the medium term is to advocate for reforms in indicators of capital expenditure monitoring, because cash flow, as I indicated earlier, it's not linear as depicted in the grant framework of the 25, 50, 75, and 100. And on the long-term aspect of this, we also advocate for policy reforms on adjustment, budget process, SCM, and planning. Now,
Mr. Mkoki,
yes.
Sorry to interrupt you, sir.
Yes.
Can you please try to round up by 11 o'clock?
Okay, no, let me then give through to my colleague, because I think this was the last one I was going to touch, and then she could then elaborate on the others. My colleague Kumocho, Chairperson, with your permission, through you.
Good morning, Chair, and to the members of the committee. I think I'm pretty much covered by both NEC member Baloyi and Neba, but maybe just to add, just on the MSIG grant, and just as a general principle that has basically been coming through in terms of this medium-term budget policy statement, is basically diverting grants that are targeted towards local government for capacity building, from Schedule 5 to Schedule 6 to national government. And we've observed that with much concern as SALGA, and basically is an issue that we've basically raised with National Treasury as well as COGTA in terms of that particular practice, and it being set as a precedent in terms of diversion of funds from local government. And of course, the medium-term budget policy statement has been adopted despite the concerns that we've basically raised through the process. And as Neba has basically indicated, that we're very much part of this particular process from the Technical Budget Forum up until the Budget Forum. And we engage robustly in those particular processes around the changes basically in conditional grants and that. And one major risk that we basically identify and we flagged with our colleagues on the other side is that particular aspect. So that's our position in terms of the MSIG, and whether it's also basically operationalizing of IPPs through diverting grants from local government as a concern in terms of some of the changes that we basically seen. And then, but lastly, I think on the project preparation, which was also an issue that was basically raised, is that there is a facility at National Treasury. And in this particular instance, George Municipality had basically benefited from that particular facility. And the issues really that have been coming through in terms of the selection process is the quality of submission by municipalities. And that's why some municipalities have basically not made it because of poorly prepared applications. And it's at the back of that that we basically partnering with Infrastructure Fund, South Africa and DBSA in terms of building a project preparation capacity basically within local government. And that's also part of the budget forum resolutions as well in that particular regard. And I think lastly around the capacity, and that relates to the infrastructure performance, there's a number of papers that we have developed together with National Treasury and COPTA, and we led on the infrastructure paper and around the asset management. And there's recommendations through the budget forum that have basically been adopted where work streams have been established to follow through on those recommendations. And topping that on the infrastructure side, of course, is the concern that has been raised around repairs and maintenance and the infrastructure backlog, and as well as building capacity and coming up with a differentiated approach that was basically proposed, that was adopted in terms of how we're going to support the various municipalities and coordinate the various programs that are currently in place. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Tshomotso. I'll go back to Mr. Baloyi, so as closing remarks, so that we go to the next presentation. Mr. Baloyi.
Thank you so much, Chair. We welcome all of the inputs and the issues around accountability, transparency, and ensuring that local government does function. And I think it's necessary that these conversations, Chair, need to continue, but equally, we need to work together in extracting accountability from local government, provincial government, and national government as well, to ensure that ultimately the resource pool, which is limited, that must find itself assisting our people, that it gets the Chair. So, Chair, I must thank the team that from SAGA that has been with us, that assisted us in dealing with the issues. And Chair, we appreciate the relationship we've had with yourselves. And until a new executive is elected, we'll still be with you when you need us, Chair. And thank you so much for the well wishes, Chair. We appreciate that. And over to you, Chairperson Beck. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Baloyi and your team. And as a parting shot from ourselves, we hope that local government in general, they make sure that they don't lose some of the skills that they have created themselves, because I think it's one thing that we are very bad in keeping the skills that we as government at whatever level we have created. Because I'm sure before you started in local government, your understanding of local government was not what it is today. So that's our investment. So we should be very generous, you and other colleagues. But thank you very much. Soft landing wherever you're going, and this we are well. In fact, I think one thing that we honorable members must note, I think we need in the next term or the other term to have a way of interacting with MECs of local government. I think that's one of the things which came out in our interaction, and we've heard it before from other people who come. Let's get them, and so that we can hear what's their type of oversight that they play, especially with these things which have been observed long time ago, especially around capacity and related matters. Thank you so much, Mr. Baloyi. As I said, safe landing. All members, just take 5 minutes break, go and wash your hands, go get a cup of tea, and then when we come back, we'll run with COSATU. Thank you so much.
No, fine, Chairperson.
Yes, Comrade Chair, I'm here. Good morning,
Hi,
Comrade Chairperson.
Hi, Comrade Matthew, how are you?
No, I'm all right. How are you, Shenge?
I'm fine, thank you.
Long time.
Long time, bro. I think 20 minutes will do for you, hey?
Yeah, no, that's more than enough, Comrade Chair. I mean, you were generous to give us more time than that, but I don't think I should torture you for more than 20 minutes.
Perfect. Let's. It's definitely not torture. It's always good to hear what the workers are saying. Let's go.
Okay, sure. Let me just share the presentation, Comrade Chair. Yeah, so no, I think, good morning, members and Chair, and thanks for giving us space as COSATU to raise our views. We'll try to focus as much as possible on the Division of Review Amendment Bill, and we think there are some very useful things there and some worrying things as well. And I think we'd also just raise one or two contextual issues as well around the MT-BPBS. But I think, Comrade Chair, just to state, some of the obvious things from COSATU's side and what informs our approach is that we think, or we know we are in the deepest recession in a century, and the economy really is limping and badly needs every bit of stimulus. As Chair, we're also informed by an unemployment rate of 44%, an all-time high, and it's rising. We also have a worrying state where 27 million people are dependent upon the state for some sort of relief and grants. We have thousands of companies which are closing or retrenching. And of course, the fiscus, as we know, is bleeding billions to corruption, wasteful expenditure, tax evasion, mismanaged SOEs and municipalities. And of course, the economy is being hindered by collapsing SOEs and unreliable energy. And we do agree with Treasury that we have a dangerously rising debt trajectory. But of course, Chair, also workers and the public are simply exhausted as well by the state of the economy, the state of governance, etc. I think, Chair, what we have concerns around partly is around government's approach to the budget, which does see some implication to the DORA bill. We feel it's silent on the need for a mass stimulus plan to grow the economy. We fear it focuses solely on budget cuts through wage bill freezes and across the board departmental budget cuts. We think there is a danger of an austerity at all costs approach versus plugging the holes in the fiscus and stimulating the economy. We would have really hoped, or we do hope in February, to see a mass stimulus program to kickstart the economy, especially the key growth sectors. And that should include funding, Chair, not just from government, but also the DFIs and the private sector as well. We do appreciate the state does have a limited budget, naturally. Chair, I think around the DORA bill, we do want to appreciate in the MTPS, the 19 billion rand allocated for the 2021 wage agreement, and specifically in the DORA bill, it's about 14 billion rand of that component. We also want to note that it was not an easy thing for Labour to sell. It was a difficult negotiations, and this is the lowest agreement for many years. A large part of it is a once-off cash gratuity. It's below inflation. And it was partly informed by our desire also to assist the fiscus to stabilize. Chair, I think we do want to make some proposals on how we think wage bill engagements can protect workers from inflation, especially the lower middle income public servants, but also assist to stabilize the fiscus. We think one is, well, government does need to respect collective bargaining. We do appreciate the commitment by the minister in this budget speech to do that. I think there's a need to engage the bargaining councils, be it the PSABC or at the SOEs or at SALGA's bargaining council, around matters of collective bargaining, the wage bill, and also to honor those agreements. I think that will establish a conducive environment for a win-win approach. We think, Chair, that you can save significant amount of money if you have a single collective bargaining regime for the entire state, not just the 800,000 public servants. Have a single wage structure for the entire state, and this should include the SOEs, where we would know that often you have no caps on what senior management earn. We think there is a need to introduce wage caps upon senior managers in the SOEs and entities. But also, Chair, we think it would be politically critical for government to send the right message to public servants and the society at large by reducing the packages they pay to executive office bearers, to senior managers across the state, to reduce the amount of people we have as ministers, as deputy ministers, as MECs, etc. If you send that kind of a message, it'll make it easier to sell compromises to a nurse earning 180,000 rand a year. We think there is a need to review the ministerial handbook. The perks we think can be still reduced further, but also, Commissioner, we are worried about the reduction in teacher posts and police posts. Those are critical. Chair, we do want to really appreciate and welcome the allocations in the daughter bill and the MTBPS as a whole for the Presidential Employment Stimulus Program. We think it's doing excellent work. We think there's space to enhance it. So we appreciate the 11 billion rand that was given, which has already created about 550,000 jobs. You know, it's giving young people a salary, experience. We want to appreciate the allocation of 74 billion rand over the MTEF to it. We think it can be further expanded. I think that's one of the critical components of the daughter bill, which I think is really quite helpful. Chair, just on basic education, we are worried about over the MTEF that the allocation of basic education would be below inflation levels. We think given the backlog around infrastructure, sanitation, that's worrying. But we do appreciate the adjusted allocation in the daughter bill to infrastructure for sanitation, for water, especially the amounts allocated for the Eastern Cape, for Free State, for KZN, for Limpopo, as seen on the slide. Our concern, Comrade Chair, is that there's still an unallocated amount of about 149 million rand in the sanitation program. And yet we have thousands of schools who still lack decent sanitation. We're worried about the shifting of 97 million rand from sanitation to the maths teachers program, which is great to get more maths teachers. But again, we're not resolving the sanitation backlog. And I think the fact that the basic education department in this budget cycle hasn't been able to meet more than 20% of its 1,000 school sanitation target, it really is indefensible. I mean, we've been having this discussion, Comrade Chair members who would know for the last 20 years. We think there is a need for the minister and the DG really to come to the party and explain what exactly is the capacity crisis and what is going to be done. Chair, we do want to appreciate, though, very strongly and to welcome the allocation of 6 billion rand under the Presidential Employment Program to basic education. We've had excellent reviews from it from the teachers' unions, and specifically the employing of 310,000 teaching assistants. But we do think, Comrade Chair, we do need a clear plan around the final eradication of the decent water sanitation crisis at our schools, and that really should be completed by next year. There's no need why it should be that complicated. Chair, on the health allocations, we are worried about the cut of about 0.6% to health over the next, or the MTEF. We are, yeah, that for us is a worrying signal given that we're still in the pandemic. But I think, Chair, we do want to appreciate the increased allocations for mental health of 40 million, for oncology for 127 million, the 240 million rand for medical interns. And I think we really want to appreciate the 350 million to support COVID-19 vaccine rollouts, to employ nurses and to employ health workers. And that really is a useful boost to the system. But we are quite worried, Comrade Chair, about the 560 million rand cuts to the NHI's health facility revitalization program. You know, in the Eastern Cape, it's 30 million cut. Limpopo, it's a huge 180 million, and smaller amounts in Mpumalanga, Northwest, and an unallocated amount of 17 million rand. We think, Chair, I mean, all of us would know the dilapidated state of our public health infrastructure, and this really is not going to assist. We would have wanted to see the opposite happening, and really it does undermine government's good efforts to save lives in this pandemic. So we would hope really to see those cuts being reversed in the February budget. Chair, on social development, this is more of an appropriations issue, but we thought let us raise it. We are worried about the cut of almost 17% in the allocation to SASSA, which is effectively is a 350 grant. But we do want in the daughter bill to welcome the 120 million rand given to employ social workers. And I think especially the 178 million rand for the early childhood development grants, which are seeing the employment of 70,000 ECD workers. And again, that's a useful intervention on that front. I'll come to the 350 grants later on, Comrade Chair. Chair, I think we want to also appreciate the Neighborhood Development Partnership grant of about 750 million. which has already employed over 32,000 people in community cleaning projects. I think we need to expand that much more, especially if we look at many of our townships, our informal areas, etc. Chair, on local government, I think what really alarmed us about the MTBPS and Tudora is that we all know the AG's reports around the dysfunctionality of countless municipalities. But the budget speech in the MTBPS were really silent about what exactly is a plan to fix this. It is also quite concerning, Comrade Chair. You know that in Cape Town, we've seen Metro Rail collapse on many lines. Some lines no longer exist servicing the Cape Flats. Yet we have the city of Cape Town, which has failed to spend 1.3 billion rand allocated to the My City service. So that doesn't make sense when workers on the Cape Flats, in Langa and Bondiville and Khayelitsha and Mitchells Plain are denied Metro Rail, yet we're not able to expand My City to compensate for that or to shift the money to Metro Rail, for example. Committee Chair, when the previous Minister of Finance, Tito Mboni, was there, he talked about fixing the Vaal River issue, but we're seeing a rollover of 582 million rand on that program. Chair, we do want to appreciate the 81 million rand given to George for investing in water infrastructure, but I think we really need to see clear plans to stabilize local government and a roadmap to move us towards the district development model, because the current status quo is a ticking time bomb. So, Committee Chair, I think just the other issues are more, I thought, since you're so generous to give me so much time, just to kind of flag a few other issues around the budget, but not really around daughter bill, but I'll just go through them very quickly, Committee Chair. We think more needs to be done to give economic and social lift to the economy, but we must appreciate the money that's been allocated from the UIF, the money given to people who suffered from the violence in KZN and Gauteng. Those are really useful interventions, but more needs to be done. And we really need to ramp up the implementation of the economic recovery plan, especially around our local procurement interventions. We do need to modernize the UF systems where workers wait months at times to receive the monies, and look at a broader package of support to struggling businesses. Committee members would be glad, I think, to hear that we are making progress on the pension funds withdrawal proposal we had raised with Treasury last year. And there should be a paper coming out shortly, and a bill would come with the budget speech in February, allowing distressed workers a limited access to the pension funds. And I think that's a useful stimulus to the economy as well. Committee Chair, just getting towards the end, and I'll try to gallop a little bit. I think on the 350 COVID grant, it really has given hope to millions of people. I think the queues you see the post office show you that as small as it is, people do value it. It's a useful poverty relief mechanism. So we would simply want to see it being continued beyond March. We think it is affordable to the fiscus. See how can we raise it to the food poverty line, but also critically, Chair, how can we move towards electronic payments for recipients to end these queues of people waiting at the post office. But in essence, it is a stepping stone towards a BIG. Committee Chair, we must really welcome the infrastructure program, the 500 billion rand, the 100 billion rand over the MTEF in the next decade. And I think we do welcome the pending amendment of Regulation 28 to allow pension funds also the choice to invest in infrastructure. We think these will really help to boost the economy. And I think we must commend Comrade Chair Treasury for recently designating cement as a locally procured requirement for public infrastructure. And those are the kind of interventions we think will help to grow the economy, to save companies, to create jobs. Committee Chair, on corruption, we really hope to see in the budget speech next year more efforts to strengthen the ban on politicians doing business with the state, more resources given to our law enforcement agencies and to SARS to conduct lifestyle audits. And I think, Chair, also it's quite worrying that government hasn't implemented the blacklisting of delinquent companies from public tenders yet, despite their commitment to do so. We are quite pleased that the Minister, Comrade Madiba, has spoken about tabling the public procurement bill at NEDLAC by the end of this year and getting into Parliament next year. And we really hope it'll be a critical tool to establish a single public procurement system for the entire state. And this can help us to drive local procurement, to save costs for the state, to tackle corruption and wasteful expenditure. But we think there is a need, Comrade Chair, to centralize the procurement of certain large-scale items in the state, like textbooks, vehicles, etc. Chair, I think really getting towards the end on the revenue front, we really must commend SARS for the excellent work they're doing. We think we need to assist them more, especially on customs enforcement and to further reduce the tax loopholes. We think there is some space to increase taxes next year on the wealthy, but I think we must commend the work that's being done by SARS to rebuild it. On the SOE front, Chair, I'll just be very quick. It's worrying that we don't have clear plans to save many of our SOEs, in particular Transnet and PRASA and Denel, SABC, the post office, Mango, etc. We need really clear plans around them. We simply cannot continue for them to be hanging on for dear life. We would hope that government will retable the RABS bills of parliament next year, so we can fix the road accident fund, because clearly the fuel price regime as it is now is unaffordable and is suffocating the economy. Chair, I can leave the appropriations issue if we've already covered it. So I think, Chair, yeah, in conclusion, let me apologize if I've taken a little bit longer than I thought. But I think, Chair, look, there are good parts in the daughter bill around the presidential employment program, around some of the additional hirings of health workers, of teachers, of social workers, etc. But there are also very worrying parts around the school sanitation program, around the shifting of funds from healthcare infrastructure, etc. But Chair, again, we need to really hear from government clear plans about tackling corruption, waste, and expenditure, especially at a local government level. And really, the daughter bill, the MTPPS was silent on those ones. I think lastly, Commissioner, we really do hope in February we'll have a budget which will really stimulate the economy and support job creation, continue relief to the unemployed, really tackle corruption, waste, and expenditure, help to rebuild the SOEs and local government in the state. And you know, really, Chair, I know you were generous in the beginning to congratulate MPs for the local election results. I think you were being very gentle. But from us, COSATU, I think for us, the clear message from voters, including workers and our own members, is that they're losing patience with us, with the Alliance, with the ANC. We have a very limited time to clean up. Otherwise, voters will deliver similar results in 2024. But I think also the opposition parties themselves didn't escape also from voters' wrath. Many opposition parties, including the DA, also lost support. And I think the fact that all of us should be worried, irrespective of our political party preferences, we should all be worried about a voter turnout of about 46%. You know, that's about 12 million people in an adult population of about 40 million. So that's about a quarter of adults who could have voted or could have registered came out to vote. And that should send a message to all of us that voters at large have lost faith in all of us, irrespective of our political parties. So let me stop there, Committee Chair, and I apologize if I took a little bit too long, but yeah, or if I moved a little bit away from the daughter bill. But thanks very much, Committee Chair members.
Thank you so much, Comrade Smith Parks. That's fine. No train smash. Remember, we still have got an amendment appropriations. I'm sure you'll be able to ventilate some of your issues when we deal with that bill. And let me say that we definitely appreciate your always interacting with this committee, so that we also get the feel of the issues that affect the workers and their perception as to how, as their perception on some of the things happening and proposal as to how certain things should be fixed. I would like just to stress this one again, that all of us here at the end of the day would like to see better service delivery to the masses of our people, whose majority are the poorest of the poor, because of the many apartheid laws that were still getting their effects even today. Honorable members, here's the presentation. Can I get an indication who would like to engage with the presentation? Honorable members.
Matafa.
Honorable Matafa.
Kaiso.
Onyana.
Honorable Kaiso. Honorable Hlonyana. Did I hear Honorable Lenzana? Okay, I know he's having problem with his connectivity. When he comes back, he'll indicate. Honorable members, Honorable Matafa,
Chairperson,
Honorable Lenzana. Okay.
I've managed, Chairperson.
Okay.
This connectivity, it's just two questions for me.
No, you are number 4, Honorable Lenzana. Don't stress.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. Okay. So let me start with Honorable Matafa, number one in my list.
Thank
you
you,
know how
Chair.
we do it, five minutes max.
Thank you, Chairperson. No, I'm not going to be 5 minutes. I'm just going to be maybe a minute. Thank you to Comrade Matthew for the presentation. As always, we can see that you really put effort to scrutinizing the reports that are emanating from the executive. Just two questions. I see COSATU is affirming the presidential employment initiative. My interest is to find out, as far as the economic growth is concerned, because it is being punted as the, not to say the silver bullet, but as a major input that should be able to address the challenges faced by the country. Are the current interventions, including the Presidential Employment Initiative, according to the view of COSATU, coordinated in a manner that they drive the agenda in the same direction? And are they complementary in nature? Because lately, from the executive, particularly from the president, there have been many initiatives, starting from this one up until the infrastructure development plan, aimed at reconstructing and reviving the economy. Is there a way that these initiatives are complementary in your view? And the last point is just on slide 9, where COSATU speaks about provision of decent water and sanitation to schools in 2022. We have noted a challenge that Matthew, as far as certain grants aimed at that are concerned, particularly the school's infrastructure backlogs grant. It has been established to eradicate service delivery challenges in schools as it relates to infrastructure. And the biggest challenge is water and sanitation. But we note there is also underspending of this particular grant from those affiliate unions that are operating in this space. Is there any input or feedback from them as to where are the bottlenecks? Because we as a committee are concerned that monies and resources are made available in order to improve the quality of service, improve infrastructure that our kids are actually utilizing on a daily basis. But these funds are underspent or misspent or end up being returned back to the treasury. Is there any view that you have in terms of how best can we use these grants, or where are the challenges? And I know that it's a long shot since you are not necessarily operating at the lowest level, but it would be interesting if whether you have had interaction with some of your members who might raise issues in terms of where these challenges are. But it's a concern that we are noting, and we agree with yourselves that we should strive to ensuring that quality water and sanitation is provided to all the schools as soon as possible. I will pause there, Chair, and thank you for the presentation from COSATU and you giving us the opportunity to participate. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Matafa. Honorable Kaiso, it's your turn.
Yeah, thank you very much, Honorable Chair and Comrade Matthews. Welcome with your presentation. Chair, quickly, I just want to go to this area which has been raised by COSATU. I think we've been running away on this issue of a single bargaining structures, as being a mechanism to fast track the issues of wastages and the issue of a wage bill, etc. Because what is happening there in as far as the state-owned enterprise are concerned when it comes to wages, because there's actually a disparity between the, if you look at the state-owned enterprises and the entire public sector, as workers. So the sooner that is being brought to a control in as far as, bargaining is concerned, it will eliminate a number of, a number of issues which are related to wages or salary disparities in the state-owned institution and the public sector. So if that could be narrowed in future and could be fast-tracked, at least it will try to address a number of issues which are related to salaries, because you can see the level of corruption which is there, also compacting on the issue itself, around the state-owned enterprise. Yeah, so I think COSATU is raising a quite important issue that we need to take heed of. And secondly, Honorable Chair, I think last time we tried to deal with and we tried to, raise the issue of these 350 rands, which is trying to mitigate on poverty for our people, poor people, and that ultimately the government has actually, heeded that and implemented it, and our people are quite nicely relieved so far, despite the corruption. I mean, despite the unemployment, which has now reached alarming proportion of 44%. I think the 350 grants have helped a lot. And now, given the situation that we do not know when is this pandemic is going to end, and the level of unemployment is actually growing and growing. So the 350 rands has actually been, assisting to come in between to assist our poor people, at least to find a way to make a living every day, to find something to eat on the table. So I think it will be a good idea that it should be considered to extend it beyond March 2022, so that we look things in advance, so that we don't wait for a crisis to occur, because we don't know what is going to happen by the end of March. And obviously, if the figures are telling you that unemployment is actually doubling or increasing on a continuous basis, and we have seen the macroeconomic outlook is actually becoming bleak, and all the prices, everything has been pushed, cannot be bared by the poor. So it does tell you that something must be done, to come in between before we see this crisis, because I want to believe that these economic indicators also talk to the poor situation or the economic situation that the poor people find themselves in. So there has to be something that at least will put forward, so that it can be able to assist to absorb these pressures that the poor are finding themselves in. I just want to check with COSATU, because you said MTBPS is contributing towards collapse of municipalities, but my belief is that it is not only MTBPS which has resulted in the collapse of municipalities. There could be, there are wide range of issues which has actually contributed towards collapse of municipal services. But I just want to check from COSATU, why are you saying only MTBPS is responsible? Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Kaiso. Honorable Hlonyana, it's your turn.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Chair, would like to say to Comrade Matthew, thank you very much for the presentation, as usual. It is a presentation which is well researched and well presented. I want to say I agree with Comrade Matthew on the issue of we need to reduce the money which is spent on the executive. The ministerial handbook need to be revised because, honestly speaking, members of parliament are earning a lot of money. I don't even want to talk about what the ministers are earning. It's just downright ridiculous. And some of the benefits that they're benefiting makes absolutely no sense when you're already earning so much money. They can afford themselves. And I think there's just a lot of things that the country is doing, and that money could be redirected to somewhere else. I don't even want to speak about the bloated cabinet, which we still, even to this day, as the EFF, are still calling for the scrapping of the deputy ministers. There is no need for them to be there. You have the DGs, so there's absolutely no need for them to be there, the deputy ministers. And that money could be channeled somewhere else where we are lacking in this country. On the public procurement, again, the leakages are still a lot of leakages there. And that's where we lose a lot of money because, you know, procedures are just not followed. And we just continue to lose so much money as South Africa. But again, I just want to also touch on, as you touched on, a voter turnout. Yes, the issue of a voter turnout should be a concern for everybody, for all political parties and all organizations in this country, because it should tell us something. It should tell us that our people are tired. It should tell us that our people maybe no longer even believe in the voting system. And that's a serious concern because a lot of people died for us to have this opportunity to vote. A vote should be something that we take as seriously as religion. So we should look into it, Chairperson. It is something that must be looked into it. And maybe let's see as a nation, how do we bring back the confidence that our people should believe in the voting system, that it can change their lives. And then lastly, Comrade Matthew, on a lighter note, you see, this tripartite alliance COSATU has, you should not stay in an abusive relationship, my brother. If it's no longer working, our shame, it's not working anymore. You know, you should look at this in this manner. The governing party cannot even pay their own workers there in Lutuliha. How do you think they're going to pay the workers you are representing?
Question, Honorable Sonyana.
So I'm just saying, on a lighter note, Honorable Matthews, I know, leave that marriage. It's not working. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Sonyana. In my six decades that I've lived, I've had girls encouraging others to divorce. Guess what? Immediately you go out, they come in. So you must be careful, Comrade of the advice. Come in, Honorable Lenzana. Let me just add, if even men encouraging you to go out and then they go in.
Yes, Chairperson. Chairperson, let's start by welcoming the presentation by COSATU as led by Comrade Matthew. You always on spot. You don't disappoint us, my leader. I will not comment about others. Let me focus on this. Quite good. It's two questions in the main, Comrade Matthew. But the starting one would be more generic. If I would ask, because you have got the responsibility as that a serious component of the alliance, as to always check if the National Democratic Revolution is still on track, particularly when it relates to the presidential injunctions at his State of the Nation address, focusing in the main on economic renewal and, economic transformation. When you're looking at this budget, is it still looking into the development of the developmental state? Are we still committed into the advancement of social transformation, are we still committed to a class bias budget when you look at this one? I'm saying, Chairperson, this is just a generic question. Now, coming to my two questions, which are focused on COSATU's presentations, just two questions, Chair. One, what is COSATU's view on the rollovers, particularly the rollover of the 582 million by Mfuleni Municipality for the Vaal River Infrastructure Program? I would like to get a sense of the thinking of COSATU there. Then the last one would be, I want to be careful here, Chairperson. I don't want to begin to throw allegations, but I would like to get a sense once more from COSATU on centralizing of procurement of certain large-scale items like medicines, vehicles, textbooks, and the like. What is the view of COSATU about the performance of the Chief Procurement Officer? I don't want to be quick into saying this is how the office is, be it culture or functioning or what, but I would like to get it from COSATU. What is the COSATU's view? Thanks, Chairperson.
Honorable Mlenzana, thank you. Let me check with the honorable members. Honorable Matafa, anything which came to your mind?
No, I am covered. Thank you very much, Chair.
Honorable Kaiso, anything?
Yeah, Chair, I just want to check on COSATU on the issue of underspending. I haven't got the view of COSATU on underspending. I only got the view on cutting. But I just wanted to get a view on underspending, because underspending is one of the exercise which has disadvantaged people when it comes to service delivery, because a number of departments have, for instance, come rush during the adjustment of budget to say, I want this and this and this and this, only to find that the same money is then been taken back because it was not spent, and it's billions of rands which have not been spent. And in some department, I'm not sure whether COSATU has picked up that, but that's what has actually happened when it comes to underspending. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Kaiso. Honorable Shanyana, do you have anything in mind?
No, Chair, I've given all my marriage advice today. I'm good.
Honorable Mlenzana.
Hey, this one. Chairperson, just one little thing, Chair. Just to check with COSATU on the view of COSATU in terms of comparing the manner in which money is spent vis-a-vis the impact that money has actually done. I'm raising this question, Chair, to Comrade Matthew, with this background that you would have either departments or provinces, particularly in the Western Cape, where they would, because they want a clean audit opinion from the side of the Auditor General, they would rather sacrifice the poor masses of the Western Cape because they want to take money back to Treasury so that they are not seen to have been underspent. What is the view of COSATU in terms of that? Or is COSATU able to pick up such discrepancies? Thanks, Chairperson.
Thank you, and Honorable Mlenzana. Thank you, honorable members. I think one question. We have just interacted with SALC. I'm sure you were on the platform already at that time. And you raised a number of things about the malfunctioning of municipal governments. I think SALC mainly said that yes, we are there to help as the association, but the buck stop with the officials at the department, with the politicians at the municipality, but also with the MECs responsible for local government in different provinces. So my question is, there is so much which has been raised as far as local government is concerned. In particular, what comes from the Auditor General's report. Now, I want to check whether COSATU in provinces, you do interact with legislatures just like you are interacting with us, but in particular with the MECs responsible for local government. The advantages of that are many and varied. I don't think I would get into that, but that's the background. So for instance, one of the things that we have just decided on is that going forward, we'd like to have sessions here with the different MECs, especially MECs for local government, to try and improve on oversight. But as you know, that the primary oversight over MECs is with the provincial legislatures. Comrade Smith, it's your turn.
No, thanks very much, Comrade Chair, and to honourable members. I think, yeah, no, I think the question members are raising are really quite helpful, and I think it's positive, Comrade Chair, members, that I think we're all essentially singing from the same hymn book, that we need to save South Africa, we need to rebuild government, rebuild the economy. And I think that's a positive thing, because when we have that common understanding, irrespective of the color of our T-shirts, it does help us then to address the issues. I think to Honorable Matafa, I mean, it's difficult to say. And sometimes you do see good efforts by government. The Presidential Employment Program, we've had very good reviews from our unions around it. They're quite pleased. But at times you also don't get a sense of coordination in government. You know, for example, in Comrade Madiba's speech, the minister's speech, he talked about releasing digital spectrum. But I think we all know that's been mentioned every year. It's not happening, you know. We've had a lot of engagement with government around, for example, speeding up water licensing. And it's just amazing that the president gives a very progressive outline, but you find departments or ministers or premiers, etc., or mayors don't move with speed. I think for us, Comrade Matafa, Honorable Chair, the concern one is around implementation. We have a good economic recovery and reconstruction plan, but we are very slow at times on implementation. Some of the delays are inexplicable, and we don't hold officials or DGs or HODs to account for the failure in that regard. There's also times silence on critical things. It's amazing how PRASA has been allowed to be destroyed over the past 2 years. And you just find silence from government or a sense of urgency to fix it. I mean, it's stuff you can't even make up, stuff which belongs in a movie. That, for example, at Langa Station in Cape Town, an informal area has been built upon it, and nothing has been done. We outsource leadership to the courts, but that one station means that trains can't get to Khayelitsha, to Guguletu, to Mitchell's Plain, etc. Costs of billions of rands. I think, but on a positive side, there is good work that is at time being done by government, but at times government doesn't go and claim those victories to give a sense of positive news to the public, to society, to workers, to investors. There is good news on different fronts. So for example, when Treasury made a good announcement about designating cement for public infrastructure to be locally produced, there was no public announcement from government. We had instead as COSATU to say, fantastic news, thumbs up, this is going to boost the local manufacturing sector of cement, create jobs, etc. And leave us at the propaganda purpose, but as good as society to have some good news, because you need that to rebuild society. To Honorable Matafa on the school infrastructure grant, This is the issue that teachers union SATU has raised. I think we've all raised it across party lines. It's just unbelievable. Since former President Mbeki's time, we've been kicking the can down the road around when are we going to ensure all schools have decent sanitation. You can't explain it. You can't explain it in a society where we delivered a world-class soccer World Cup in 2010. We can manage a nuclear power station at Kubek very well, but we can't deliver simple toilets. And really, it is a management failure. It's a capacity issue. It's a lack of political will, to be honest. And I think we really need to hold the minister, the DG to account, the MECs. At times, you also would get worrying reports about corruption as well, that when a school project does come up, money is chowed, as we always know. There was even one report of a ghost school being built in the Eastern Cape at one stage. So I think, Chair, for us, really, there has to be a center page. You should not be in the 21st century in South Africa, a modern industrial economy, and having young girls having to go and relieve themselves in the bush. It's beyond defensible. To Comrade Chair, to Honorable Kaiso, my former chairperson, I mean, we've been raising the issue of a need for a single collective bargaining process for the entire state. We think it'll be win-win. It's going to help protect workers from inflation, etc. We think it'll help benefit government because it will reduce the bloated management wage bills at SOEs, at entities. It will give more stability to Treasury to plan for the budgets because it will have one agreement for the entire state. There is a bill drafted by DPSA now, which begins to start looking at it, but in a small way only, not big enough, to address the disparities which exist in the state. But I know Treasury, from what our engagement with them, they are keen on the idea. I think they've also seen I think they've also seen, Comrade Chair, our concerns about the proliferation of agencies created by departments, which often seek to circumvent the Public Service Bargaining Council processes. And often at times it becomes the javelin approach, where DG creates an agency because he knows that an agency, there's no cap on what the CEO or the commissioner would earn. So we think really it is a critical thing to do. Let's get moving on it. It'll benefit everybody. So, Comrade Chair, to Honorable Kaiso, no, we were not saying that the MTBPS is collapsing municipalities. Apologies if that came across like that. What we were saying is that municipalities are collapsing because of corruption and wasteful expenditure, which you all know about. It's also about incompetent managers or mayors. I think, again, we all know those stories. But I think also, Comrade Chair, that we are not able to sustain these 259 municipalities. Some of them, they don't have a sufficient rate space, and they will never have to sustain a municipality. So if you have Prince Albert, Laingsburg, and Beaufort West in the Karoo, they're not able to sustain the municipalities. It would be better to consolidate them, to have one well-capacitated Karoo municipality, which can deliver quality services. I don't think, to be honest with you, voters care about having a mayor in Prince Albert. What they would care about is having a responsive ward councillor, and then you can have the municipal service sites in each town to deal with the issue of rates, of water, of electricity, of roads, etc. But it's clear we can't afford 259 municipalities. So I think hence our call, Comrade Chair, to support government's call for moving towards district development models, because this current system is broken and we simply can't afford, the AG reports would just paint a horror story. I think, Comrade Chair, to Honorable Hlonyana, I want to thank Honorable Member for the questions, and I think we agreed. I mean, we were disappointed. It was good when the President reduced cabinet from 34 to 28 ministers. Could have been further, but it was a step in the right direction. But I think we were disappointed when the deputy ministers were kept at 34. We think there's space to reduce. There's space, we think, to reduce the amount of MECs, etc. Also, Comrade Chair, it didn't make sense when we increased the staff allocation to ministers and deputy ministers when the fiscus is bleeding. And Honorable Hlonyana is right. Even deputy ministers will often complain about a lack of clarity about their role, their responsibilities, etc. Comrade Chair, I mean, it's also about sending a right message to the public that government itself is leading by example in saving costs. Chair, we've had engagement with Comrade Madiba, the Minister of Finance, around the public procurement bill. We're looking forward, and we're pleased when he made that commitment in the budget speech to release it soon. We think it really will be key, as Honorable Hlonyana is saying, to tackling wasteful expenditure and corruption, to supporting local procurement, etc. So we hope to get that bill in NEDLAC before New Year's, and we would fast track it to get it to Parliament, I think, by Easter next year, because it is a critical tool in fixing the state. Honorable Hlonyana is right, Chair, to say we should all be worried about the voter turnout. And it doesn't take a small little spark like you saw in the Middle East, in Tunisia and Egypt, for the public to reject the political establishment across party lines. And I think we're in danger of that. You can't afford a 44% unemployment rate.
Recording in progress.
A public which is losing faith in the body politic because of corruption, etc. I think, Chair, the message from voters is not difficult. It's about, can we fix ESCOM? Can we fix PRASA and Transnet? Can we deal with corruption? Can we grow the economy, create jobs? If we can do those fundamental things, then voters will indulge us. To Honorable Hlonyana is right to refer to lines as a marriage. I think like all marriages, it has its dysfunctionalities. There is good parts, there is bad parts. But I think we can also say, without me becoming a propagandist for the ruling party, we benefited as COSATU from that relationship at times. We were able to pump out 63 billion rand from the UF to 5 million workers over the past pandemic. We're able to quickly find agreement with government, with Treasury, around the relief package for the violence in KZN, including the 350 grant. So those are things which benefits workers' pockets. We're able to make some progress around local procurement. Even on the legislative front, there's been good progressive bills which come out of Parliament. The Minimum Wage Act, I know EFF doesn't agree with it, but it's fine. From our point of view, it's a good act which benefited workers. Parliament is now busy with, or the NCP is busy with the COIDA, which will benefit domestic workers. Parliament passed the PIC Act, which helped to give a pro-worker investment mandate to the PIC. So there is some good things. We do have some good ministers. I can boast that some of them come from COSATU, like Ibrahim Patel. We think the president is doing a good work, but there's much more that needs to be done, and we just simply are running out of patience from our own members, because the past glories will not sustain you in the present or the future. Chair, Honorable Mlanzana, I think on the question, do we still have a developmental state? To be honest, Comrade Chair, look, government is doing good on many fronts. I mean, the fact that 60% of your budget is for the broader social wage, that's a very progressive thing. It benefits half of society, the poorest half. But I think what we're also witnessing is a collapse of the state on many fronts, of SOEs, of local government, and those deteriorations are threatening all the gains of post-1994. I know it will take us some time to rebuild the state, a decade, but we are in danger of losing many of those progressive achievements since 1994. I think to Honorable Mlanzana in Kaiso, on the rollovers, the underspending, it is quite worrying. It shows a real capacity management failure, political failure in those departments. The voter issue has been there for some years. Comrade Tito even tried to intervene even before he became minister to fix it. So you can't explain the rollovers. And we sympathize with Treasury because they can't indulge departments which don't spend the money. There's many others who are waiting, and if you don't give them the money, there's a consequence. You could have given that money for social grants, for example, or for industrial financing, or to the CCMA. So it really is inherently selfish of those departments not to spend, to do rollovers, etc., especially when the state is bleeding. But also, Comrade Chair, there is another trend as well, where departments engage in fiscal dumping, where they quickly rush to spend the money in the last quarter of the year. And I think to Honorable Kaiso's point, what's the value for money? You don't see it. And I think that's also why we raised the issue of Cape Town. How can we not spend 1.3 billion rand in my city when we've seen Metro Rail collapse? So there really is a disjuncture in that regard. Chair, I think we believe there's a value for centralized procurement of certain, not all, but certain large items in the state. We think it will help save money for the fiscus. It can help to drive local procurement. It can help to reduce corruption. We think the Chief Procurement Office, when it was established, did very good work in the beginning. It really shows some good savings and interventions. We think there has been a disruption to it with the lack of a permanent Chief Procurement Officer for some years now. That needs to be finalized as quickly as possible. But we think there is some good work that they are doing, even with the acting CPO. And I think, for example, the cement localization is a useful one. We think there's more space on other designations too. but really it does need to be prioritized. We have raised it with the Deputy Minister. We hope it will be sorted out soon. Chair, I think, yeah, the last point of Honorable Mlenzana around the impact of spending, I think that's something we all fail to do sufficiently to monitor. And there is space. Comrade Chair, NEDLAC's budget is a very small budget in the broader scheme of things. It's about like 50 million rand, but we've managed to save about 10 million rand in this past year, largely because of traveling costs. So I think if you did all similar introspection across all government departments, entities, municipalities, you could save a lot of money and then reprioritize it to where it's more important. So in that regard, we've made a proposal now for NEDLAC to allocate that savings to the CCMA to help fill some of their gaps. But Chair, I think the other point is also to kind of raise in that same kind of theme. We've also seen at times when government systems like the UF are not up to scratch, they're not modernized, they don't speak to each other. And then problems occur, like the AG highlights. But we've now seen a new trend in the UF, for example, Comrade Chair, when the AG reprimands officials are suspended. When they return, they become so paralyzed by fear that they're afraid of doing what needs to be done. And that has an impact because it means money doesn't get to workers, doesn't get to businesses or to the economy. I think to the last questions from the comment from Chairperson, it's difficult. I mean, I think we all see the malfunctioning of local government. Some of it just continues forever and a day, and it seems to be no end in sight across all provinces. I mean, the stories that you would hear from Kanaland Municipality in the Western Cape are horror stories. So I think honestly, government nationally, provincially must be much more firm on it. You're right, Comrade Chair, to say it's the responsibility of MECs, of mayors, of managers, even the minister to intervene. I don't think, Comrade Chair, we've done it as COSATU in a provincial level or SAMU. I don't think we've at times had a sufficient engagement with the MECs for COGTA. I think we should be doing much more on that regard. There is some engagements though. I mean, for example, we had in the past week a reinstatement of 500 workers who had been dismissed, I think in the Steve Chweti municipality in Mpumalanga. And there was engagement with SAMU, with COSATU, with the MEC, and that was resolved after about 2 months. I think Comrade Chair, lastly, that there is a need for us as COSATU, because we have an alliance with the ANC. We're just concluding a CEC meeting today. We also need to reflect on how we as COSATU will engage with municipalities where the ANC no longer is ruling, or where there's coalition municipalities. It's a new experience for all of us, but also we need to adjust ourselves, because at the end of the day, we have to improve the lives of not only our members, municipal workers, etc., but also to see how do we help to rebuild these communities, irrespective of which party is running the municipality. Because even in COSATU, yes, we support the ANC, we call upon members to vote for the ANC, most do, but we also have members who vote, as is their right, for other political parties, and we respect that. And at the end of the day, it's about improving the lives of workers and members of society at large. So it does require all of us to reach out across the party line, Comrade Chair. But I think let me stop there, Chair, and I hope I answered the question. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Comrade Matthew. Thank you, honorable members. I think that was a good engagement as usual. As I said to you, Comrade Matthew, we are still going to do the adjustment appropriation bill. So there'll be a further, there are too many issues that come to the economic space which need our attention. But once more, thank you very much for always making yourself available. Thank you. Darren, any announcements from you?
No, Chairperson. Our next meeting is on Friday, where we will be considering and adopting the report on the Division of Revenue Amendment Bill.
Thank you.
Chairperson.
Okay, thank you so much. Honorable members, ladies and gentlemen, this takes us to the end of this meeting. The meeting stands adjourned.
Thanks, Chairperson.
Enclose.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Sure, Oscar, man.
Inkomo.
Recording stopped.